Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Kansas City's global community radio station on KUAW.org. Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. This is Jessica, your host with purpose, passion, and power. I am so excited. It is the first Sunday of the new year. It's not just a new year, y'all, it is a new decade. How about that? That is amazing. We've made it. We've made it. It is 2020, and I am excited about all of the things that are happening in the community with so many wonderful people and so many wonderful things happening and so much greatness happening. I'm excited so much about our guest. But before we get into our guest, I'm going to say thank you, Kansas City. Thank you, everyone that supported the Giving Hope and Help 7th Annual Feminine Hygiene Product Drive. Listen, it was amazing. My two guests here happen to be volunteers on that day, so I'm really excited about that. So we'll get to them, but I want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone that supported. We have supported all of the domestic violence shelters in Kansas and Missouri. And we have also added additional organizations and homeless shelters and just all types of people that are receiving the products that you've donated. So thank you so much for doing that. There's so much to come with what's happening with Giving Hope and Help. And I want to know about your nonprofit and what you're doing. So please do let me know so that I can share your community events and what's happening. But right now, I do want to get right into my beautiful guest today. I am so excited to introduce you to Attorney Donna Watson and her friend and associate and assistant and right-hand lady, Renee Sutherland. These ladies are doing wonderful things in the community, and we're going to have a phenomenal show with great information. We're here today to talk about Donna Watson's book and what's in the book, and all about getting your business in order. And you can feel free to chime in at any moment. But Donna is a beautiful soul. I've known her since we were in high school. We were in Inroads, and she's doing some wonderful things in the community. She's an attorney, like I said, and has turned her trial tribulation into purpose. And I happened to be blessed to be able to speak yesterday. And one of the things that I said is that everything that you go through is because you are chosen, and you are chosen for purpose.
That's right. That's right, Jessica.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm so excited to be on the show today. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think that it's so important on this very first Sunday of the first Sunday of the year of the decade to discuss these matters, because estate planning isn't the sexy area of the law. It's not the part. It's not the area that people tend to gravitate towards when you graduate from law school. In fact, it can be sort of a morbid practice. But in that, there is a lot of help and a lot of support that you can give to families. And it's my honor and privilege to work in that area every single day of the year. So
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Now, tell me a little bit about, is the experience that you had with your mom, did that catapult you to go into this, or were you already into the estate planning and finances?
Well, that's a good question. And to back up a little bit, I experienced the death of my parents, my father in 2015, my mother in 2017. But my mother's death was unexpected. And my mother was she was the custodial parent. So my interaction with her, my rearing, all came from her. And so when she died, it really made me re-examine what I was doing with my life. I worked in estate planning here and there. I worked with two amazing attorneys in Illinois and in Oklahoma. And but I always gravitated towards income taxation. I had a degree in accounting, and I knew I could get a job. Let's just be real, get a job. And so it wasn't until she passed away that I really realized that this was my calling. This is the area I really want to be in. I didn't know what that was going to look like, whether that meant I was going to go into private practice, whether that meant that I was going to do something else with that, but I knew that that's what I was going to do. And I'll tell you, I remember so clearly when I resigned from my position, and I said, this is what I'm going to pursue. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I was going to pursue it. And I got busy writing. And as soon as I did that, and as soon as I, kind of put myself aside and surrendered to what I thought the will of God was, doors started opening up.
Wow.
Doors started opening up.
Chosen.
Yes,
Oh my
that's
God!
right.
We're gonna bring that right on into this show if you don't mind.
That's right.
Because you were chosen.
That's right. That's right.
And that is so amazing that you went through the quilts of life. But
And
the purpose
That's right. The purpose.
held the stitches together.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes we don't want to go through things. And I will say it was painful. My mother served as a caretaker for my great aunt. And just to make a long story short, my great aunt died on Monday, May 1st, 2017. And as we were preparing for her funeral, I was dialoguing with my mother and talking with her. And my aunt's funeral was Friday, May 5th. I woke up that morning and my mother had died. So my mother died and I had to carry on with this funeral, and it was just, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I consider myself a strong person, someone girded in the word, but I mean, we all have our breaking points and we all have our moments. And I had to really take some time and pray through that and struggle through that, get counseling through that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Good,
There's nothing wrong with getting some counseling.
That's right. That's right. That's so right.
And but I'm better for it, and I think the product that came out of that is blessing people, and that was my hope, that people wouldn't have to go through some of the things that I went through, or that they can experience the joys that I went through because of my mother's planning and pre-planning. So yes, it was a trial, but it's a testimony on the other side.
Amazing. Sometimes when we get to the peak of our belief, disbelief, you had to have been in disbelief.
Yes.
That your mother passed the day of your aunt's funeral.
Yes.
That is at the peak of disbelief.
That's right.
Because God, where are you? What is happening?
That's right. It seemed like it was too much. And I remember saying to the woman that called me from the hospital, I said, "You have got
to be kidding me."
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Wow. But look at you now.
Yes. Yes.
Again, you're chosen because you went through it. You're still sane. You've written a book that is touching the world.
Amen. Yes.
It is making an impact because when it reaches one, it has the potential to reach another.
That's right.
And so I'm just excited about what your story is, and that you've maintained your sanity and your relationship. That is the foundation of it all, I believe.
That's right.
If I can speak for you on that. And just being productive in the test and in the trial and producing something that is fruitful.
That's right.
That will remain. Isn't that amazing? Awesome. So tell us how you got to the point where you said, I'm going to write this book.
Well,
and tell us about the book.
Okay.
And if you want to read anything, well, you got your book right there. I was reading mine at 1 a.m. this morning. So I'm going to tell you, you need to get the book. And you need to tune in. Share this video.
Yes. So I decided to write the book probably when I was speaking at my mother's funeral. I said, I'm going to do something to make her proud of me. And people thought that I was saying that out of my grief, or that, I was having some conflict about her dying, and did I have some false sense of responsibility? But something was kind of laid on my heart to share. Maybe it wasn't the book that day, but it was something was laid on my heart to share this experience. And then I started writing down. I had a journal. I had 2 friends that gave me a journal, and I started writing down things that I was experiencing during the administration of her estate. You know, how to handle turning utilities off, what documentation you need, and the over documentation that's required. What does it look like to have to keep saying, my mother died, my mother died, my mother died? How to keep repeating the story each time you're talking to a financial institution without crumbling down. And so I almost got to the point where I had a script, and it was just a memorized, rehearsed retort or comment that I said each time I went to an institution to take care of business. But as I was writing these different scenarios down in my journal, I said, wouldn't it be great if I just compiled these? And then from that sprang the idea to write the book. And when I began writing the book, I began writing it to fellow estate planning attorneys or fellow practitioners. And I'm so thankful for my friend that was my editor, because she said, who is this for? And I said, oh, it's going to be for everybody. She said, I don't even know what those words mean. It's almost like you're writing in a different language. And she said, you need to make this very plain.
Layman's terms.
Yes, layman's terms, and tell your story. Because she said it sounds very mechanical. And she said, you need to impart some of your experience. So in each chapter, what I endeavored to do was kind of outline some things. And then I told a little bit of my story.
Well, you know, when I was reading this, I'm going to be honest. I read this and I said, you know what? Donna's an attorney, and I can understand everything that she's written in this book. I wouldn't consider myself totally ignorant, but this book can be read and understood by a 6th grader.
That's right. Yes. And that's the whole point.
Exactly, because you can reach people with this. I mean, I this should be in libraries at schools, because a 5th grader could read this as well and could be inspired to want to be an attorney.
That's right.
You have no idea.
Okay, let's go ahead and claim that.
I know, that's right. It's the truth. I mean, I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, I love it, because when you read contracts and when you read things, even the disclaimer that I have in the products that we give out, it's like, okay, what is this actually saying? You know, but with this, you can understand it, you can relate to it, and I love the way you have the chapters broken down. It's such a great book. I'm going to go to lesson 1. Be prepared to make short-term and long-term decisions. You have chapter terms, you have the terms, just like they do in a textbook. Administering the estate, burial plan, executor, life insurance. What are these things to you? What do you need to do? What are some of the decisions, immediate decisions, short-term, long-term decisions that you need to make? Trust. What is a trust? What is a will? Transfer on death assignments, all these different things. Ancillary estate planning documents. Something that I'm like, okay, what is ancillary estate planning documents? And so power of attorney. Most people know what a power of attorney is, but do we really know all that it entails?
Yes.
You're given all of this information. One of my favorite parts is living trust or living will. We need that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We need that.
Absolutely. And so the reason why I really wanted to talk about not just what we do to prepare our financial holdings, but what we do to prepare our lives. Your family needs to know what your intentions are with your life. If you're on life support, if you need prolonged, sustained illness care, what does that look like? There could be a financial component to that. There's an emotional component to that. And so giving your family that information ahead of time will help them make decisions. They'll know when to transition from certain procedures or when to employ certain procedures. And what's the worst thing you can do is leave it up to them. Because no decision they ever make will be right. You know, if it kept mother
Guilt.
on the on the machine too long, there'll be some guilt. Or didn't do it long enough, there'll be some guilt. So you just want to kind of relieve them of that burden. And I think having those conversations is so important. We just finished Christmas holiday. And I'll tell you, Christmas holiday is different in my house. I went to 3 different family members' homes and had a wonderful time. But we talked about this. What does it look like? I'm having this conversation with my children. I'm having this conversation with my family. I had a cousin who pulled the book out during the holidays and was like, look, we're going to talk about these things. And I was like, go get him. Go get him. I think it's important because we tend to shy away from these conversations. But this is going to happen. Like, I may win a cruise and get to sail around the world. I may become the president of a Fortune 500 company. Those are things that may happen. What absolutely will happen is all of us will die. And so we need to be, good. And we need to be prepared for that.
Yes, yes. So tell us ways that your mother had already had you prepared.
Well, we had conversations, and I think because my mother worked in the healthcare field, she was very, just very candid about life and about life is short. You don't think, when you're a teenager, your parents are ever going to die. But she told me that she was going to die, and that her hope was always that she died before I died. But she was very candid with me about things. So we talked about what are we doing with the stuff, and she always told me the stuff is stuff. Like, don't be beholden to material things. What's important is our relationship. She also talked to me about what it would look like if I lived, how I would live after she died. She wanted me to be a woman that could sustain myself, to be independent, to have an anchor in faith. And those were things that were very important to her. But then most importantly, she talked to me about money. And that's a conversation that I now realize people didn't have with their parents. So my mother talked to me about life insurance. She worked at an insurance agency when I was born. She bought my first policy when I was 6 months old. She wanted to make sure that if anything happened to me, that there were resources available to take care of my disposal. Then she talked to me about what it looked like when I started earning money. Should I begin investing it, and how much should I begin investing? How much should I invest? She also talked about me having dual title with her on her home, on her accounts, what that looked like, how I could ideally, or in theory, go to the bank and that account was just as much mine as it was hers, but it wasn't mine. But she did that so that I would be able to transition should something happen to her. And so it was a blessing. And I thank her for her candor because, a lot of times you don't want to talk about the inevitable, but she was very candid with me, and she made sure everything was in order up to she had her burial policy paid for. All I had to do was go in with this paper. They knew where the lot was. She had paid the opening casket fee, the closing casket fee. She had everything outlined. All I had to do was pick the font and the template for her grave marker. That was all and the color of her casket. That's all I had to do. And so that's a wonderful and freeing opportunity because, as I said, we had just gotten through the process of burying my aunt. And so I went to the same funeral home. They were like, we've never had this. Yes. They were like, we've never had this before. And so I just presented the paper. And so they were like, what color? When do you want to bring her garments? And it was just very seamless. And what I am so thankful about that there were resources available to bury her. I know that tends to be the thing that can hang up a lot of people when they pass away. And so it's something you really just should invest in. I don't want anybody to have the burden of disposing of my remains. So that's taken care of right now. And I don't know if I'll have a husband, if I'll have children, what will happen. But I know that whomever is alive, when I'm not alive, they will be able to take me, and all of that will be taken care of.
Excellent.
So that was the main thing, and then everything else was gravy.
Well, that's the main reason that I titled this show "Get Your House in Order." Getting your house in order is not just your mind, body, and spirit. It's your financial paperwork. when you leave here, the burden, the grief that you leave on your family, is so bad. It's so bad. I do want to introduce our other guest, Renee Sutherland. Say hi to the people.
Hello, everybody.
Tell us how you're involved with this legacy experience.
Well, me and Donna met about 21 years ago at church at St. James United Methodist Church. And then I got a job in Atlanta, Georgia, and relocated. Recently, I came back the first of the year, and we were just able to connect again, just like we had never left each other.
Isn't sisterhood beautiful?
It is. It is a wonderful experience. So Donna was telling me everything that she was doing, and we just pretty much just caught up on everything that's been going on. And I've just been so excited about everything that she's been doing, everything that she's just bringing to people, and just the information. I have watched her do a couple of seminars. I've read the book.
Wow.
And, oh, my goodness, the book has just done wonders for me. I am a single mom and have a son, and I've had the conversation.
Yes.
And it has made me get my house in order.
Amen.
I think even in the book, the one chapter that stood out with me the most is chapter number 5 that talks about leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for those left
I
behind.
read that. I read that.
I think that was probably one of my favorite chapters because nobody ever thinks about afterwards. Nobody ever thinks about the things that you have to do afterwards, the things that need to be paid. And even when I've heard Donna speak of different situations, I think the one that probably stuck out the most for me that she talked about was trying to get her mother's cell phone off. And it's just those different type of things that we don't think about, but knowing that she has been through that experience is just a true to life thing that it definitely makes it even that more imperative for all of us.
Absolutely. So to get the cell phone off, what do you have to get the cell phone turned off?
Well, it depends on the carrier, but you do have to present a death certificate, and some carriers want an original death certificate. So when people pass away, sometimes they ask how many death certificates you want. I always tell people to get 10. Get 10 because there's that one vendor, that one relationship that's going to want that original certified death certificate. So you'll need a death certificate. And this particular carrier that she used, they needed a death certificate and then another proof of death. And so I said, what state would issue a death certificate that has a seal on it if they weren't confident that the person was dead? Well, we need another one. That's our policy.
What is the other one?
And so the other one was I had to go online and they show the memorial of the funeral home, and then it was a listing of the people that had passed that month, and they could see her name on there. And I just said, you may need to revisit this policy. I said, because first of all, it's very painful to explain that someone passed away, and then you're challenging me that the person really didn't pass away and I didn't have sufficient support and evidence that they passed away, because the first time I came, I had the obituary and they didn't think that was sufficient. So then they were like, we need the death certificate. Well, then the next time I came with the death certificate and they were like, well, where is your obituary? Well, I don't happen to carry that around with me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so that conversation, but I have talked to countless people since that encounter, and they've kind of surmised the same thing. They've said the same thing, that they've had to go out of their way to prove that someone was deceased. And I get it. We live in an era where there's fraud and all kinds of things, but I just don't think that this is the area that someone, would be committing fraud, trying to get a cell phone disconnected. So
maybe turned on, but not disconnected.
Right.
Yeah. So with the with the lights and gas and all of that, it was just the death certificate.
So, and it was I got it transferred into the new owner's name, but I kept all of those utilities on. I didn't tell them that she had passed away because the home needed to still be. I needed all those utilities on because I was selling her home. But then once I did, I was like, she has passed away, and so that went rather quickly. It was just a cell phone, which was surprising because to me, it wasn't in arrears. And so I didn't understand what all that drama was about. But with the utility company, it seemed to go very well. thankfully, my mother paid a lot of things through an automated debit process through her account. So I just kept depositing into that account because I was also named on that account. I just deposited into that account so that there was money there to just keep paying making those payments until I turned it off.
So I have a question for you. For someone that owns a home and the owner passes away, how difficult is it to keep that home in the family if there is no will?
Okay, so if there's no will, that's tends to be the issue. So you have to go through what's called probate, and probate is the process of this particular court that has jurisdiction over probate assets, directing the distribution at death. So you can go to probate with a will or without a will. But if you don't have a will, what will happen is someone will have to get letters testimony, which will give them permission to buy, sell, transfer property of the decedent. The decedent is the deceased person. However, that process tends to take a while. And when I say a while, a while. And so then it's what's going on with that property while we're trying to determine who can have authority to act on behalf of this decedent. So someone has to maintain the the property taxes. Someone has to maintain the home. And so what does that look like? And I think that that's where sometimes in our family structures we go wrong. Sometimes people just move into the house and they don't really have authority to do so. A lot of contention can arise when we're going through probate because it's a long period. So what I always recommend, even if you don't want to get a will, and I suggest that everyone have a will, but if you don't have a will, you make sure that you have and this is something that's available in Missouri, a beneficiary deed. And so that deed just allows that property to transfer at death to a new owner. Okay. What you have to do is make sure it's the person that you want to have the home, the person that you think would be responsible enough to maintain the home or sell the home or whatever they want to do. But that beneficiary deed costs about $26 and it saves you a year and maybe like 3% of the value of the home in legal fees.
And with the beneficiary deed, do you have to have an attorney to get that, or is that something you can get online?
Well, I've seen some online. My preference is always to have an attorney draft deeds. When you're talking about legal documents, I say have someone draft that for you. And they negotiate, because usually an attorney that's handling your estate planning matters, they'll do power of attorney, they'll do a living will, they'll do your trust, and they'll do their will, and they'll bundle all those things because they want to make sure you have a comprehensive package. And it's worth it, because this is the scenario I use when I think about paying for legal fees. I am now at a point where I have to color my hair, and I color my hair.
You don't, but you want to.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah,
I do
maybe
too.
That. Okay, but I use a professional to color my hair. My colorist is amazing. Shout out to you, Hands on Hair. Okay, so, but what I will say is, I don't ever just think to myself, I'll do this myself.
Yes.
I'll just mix it up and slap it. I never think that.
I will always sit in someone's chair.
Exactly.
Thank you. I'm with you.
I am always willing to take the time to have someone professionally handle my hair.
Yes.
And it's interesting. We're very adamant about, our care, our external care, people who will do our hair, people who will do our nails, what dry cleaners we use, who will rotate our tires where we go to get our car serviced. They're professionals. But when we talk about professional care of our legal affairs,
End of life,
then we're like, ooh, how much does that cost? How much is that? And it's a shame. It's a shame
because you're leaving that burden on your children.
That's
and on
right.
Your family.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
And for a $26 beneficiary deed, you're avoiding the grief and the burden and the timeline of the probate court.
Timeline and everything can be taken care of.
And everything can be taken care of.
So Donna, I would like for you to share how people can get in touch with you so that they can utilize your service. Tell them what you can do for them.
Okay, so So right now, I am working as a trust administrator at Country Club Trust Company. Our company serves as a trustee, and we handle estate administration for people. So what is estate administration? So when we're talking about that whole probate action and that whole submitting documents to the court and what that process looks like and marshaling assets, that's what we do. What I am doing now is I am speaking to groups that may not have this information and doing referrals to attorneys that practice in drafting all day long. And so what I am doing now is communicating the information. It's important for me to be a resource for my community, talk through the elements of estate planning so that when they're going to an attorney that's going to draft those documents, they are aware of what they need. And so I have a Facebook account. I have a website. I can be reached at my Donna at mylegacyexperience.com. I talk through issues that you might have. I speak at women's seminars, men's seminars, libraries, wherever you might need someone to come and talk through some of these needs. Because I think what is missing in our community is the dialogue. We don't discuss these issues.
Wow. Wow. I love it. Thank you so much. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to recap how to get back in touch with you and finish up our show. I am thankful that you guys are here today. This is some good stuff, Renee and Donna. Thank you for being here. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Purpose, Passion, and Power. Jessica Lynn. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you. Welcome back to Purpose, Passion, and Power with Jessica Lynn. You're listening to Kansas City's global community radio station here at KUAW.org, Knowledge, Understanding, and Power. We have been on with Miss Donna Watson, attorney Donna Watson, and fellow counterpart Renee Sutherland, and we have been talking about getting your house in order. Meaning your finances and your legal affairs, to have your papers and things together at time of death so that you won't leave that burden on your family. This is just an amazing conversation that we've been having with Donna, and we have been looking at her book, My Legacy Experience, and talking about her experience as to how she got here. And one of the things that we've discovered in life is that experiences will lead you to your purpose.
Yes.
And so, with that being said, Donna, I want you to go ahead and recap where we left off. We left off at people having an opportunity to get in touch with you.
Yes.
And then I want you to go ahead and say some other things that you wanted to share.
Okay, so my goal is to speak around the world about getting your estate plans in order. I can be reached at Donna at mylegacyexperience.com. I think I bring a common sense, no nonsense approach to these very important legal matters. It's something that will affect us all. Death is inevitable. We may not become the president of the United States. We may not become married to the biggest baller in the world, but we will pass away. And so how we pass away has to be done with grace and with dignity and with some responsibility. And so when we look at getting our affairs in order, it's really not for us, it's for the people that we leave behind. One of the comments that I made is that in the book is that you want to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for the people that are left behind. And I think the reason why that chapter resonates with so many people is that if you've ever experienced the death of someone and walking into their home or their living space, it can just be overwhelming. The stuff that you see, all of the accumulation of a lifetime held in one space. And so knowing where to go in that space to begin handling the disposition of those assets is key. You don't want to play detective at that time. And you don't really have the mental strength and fortitude to play detective. You don't want to do that. You just want to do what you have to do and be able to just keep moving. And so I was so grateful for a mother that was organized and that thought enough of me to have her affairs in order. And in order just meant that I knew what assets she held. I knew how to get in touch with the benefits or claims departments. She had names, she had phone numbers, she had approximate values written, and she must have updated that annually.
Every year.
Yeah, and every year. And I thought, what discipline did that take? Well, and I look at it this way. We spend our whole lives working, accumulating. Why not make sure that what you have accumulated is transferred in the way that you want it to? Because if you don't make a plan, guess what? Your state will make a plan for you. And what that will look like is that 12 months of probate that we were talking about before. And it will be distributed based on if you have a will, how it's directed in the will. But if you don't have a will, it'll go under intestate distribution. So that means if you have 5 kids, your 5 kids will each get a 1/5 share. Now, in most families, there's one child you wouldn't give a big lump sum of money to because they're not responsible enough to handle that. And so that's the reason why you make plans, because you know your family better than the state does. But if you fail to plan, that's what will happen.
Fail to plan, plan to fail.
That's right. That's right. And so one of the other things that I wanted to mention is that when we talk about estate planning, it does sound lofty and it sounds like something that only wealthy people do. I maintain if you have a pair of shoes, you have an estate. You own something.
Yeah.
You have worked, and so you want to make sure that whatever you have worked for is distributed properly at your death. So this conversation is for everyone. You want to make sure that there's someone that can step in and handle your legal affairs, and that's what the power of attorney does. They can handle your affairs should you become incapacitated. And I'm telling you, in a brief second, you could have a car accident or some other life-altering accident that could change the whole trajectory of your life. And someone would have to be able to speak on your behalf. And does anyone know you well enough to speak on your behalf? And so the more that you can articulate your wishes and wants in writing, the more successful that power of attorney will be as your advocate and as your representative. And so I just think it's for everybody. We all have lives, and there's people that want their lives sustained as long as possible. And then there's some people that are like, if I can't breathe on my own, let me go. And so you need to have that conversation, because as I was alluding to earlier in the conversation, you don't want your family to make that decision, because there will be an amount of guilt associated with that, because they'll never know. And so they'll always,
did the right thing.
if I did the right thing. And so they'll always be doubting themselves. Don't leave them with that. And we talk about how much we love our loved ones. Well, loving them means getting your affairs in order.
Getting your affairs in order.
Yes. I can think, and I want to say one thing. I can think about a couple of tangible gifts my mother gave me during her lifetime. And I can remember a Valentine's Day that she gave me a box perfume set. And I said, oh, this is the most special gift, because it was a day that I was feeling a little low. But of all the things that my mother ever did for me during my 45 years with her, on May 5th, when she passed away and having her affairs in order, that was the best gift.
Ever.
That was the best gift ever.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
The best gift ever was her mother making certain that she had her things in order.
That's right.
You know, that's awesome. I can say, I don't know if it has anything to do with the generations, but my grandparents had their affairs in order. So it was a matter of doing what you did, not having to worry about what color. I mean, my grandmother, I have it at home. She had a 9 pages of notebook paper written out of what she wanted.
Yes.
For her services, what songs were going to be sing, who was going to pray, every little detail was written out, and she did it in her beautiful handwriting in cursive, and I actually have that. That is rich. And she left here in 2016 at 96 years old. So what a lifetime, what a legacy that she left. And my grandfather had left at 88. But before he died, I was not in charge of anything. Of course, my father and his brothers were. But my grandfather even showed me the journal book. This is where everything is. You know, he even showed me where that is. And I think maybe our generation has gotten away from that.
We have. I agree with that. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's we want to keep our matters private. We don't want people
To know.
I don't want people in my business.
But
But
I think the attitude is that when I die, I'm gone. I ain't going to worry about it. Well, you're leaving it to somebody else.
That's right. That's right.
Burden.
And it's a burden. It is a burden. And I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. Nobody wants to deal with going through your house, the clothes
Trying to
that you
find insurance papers.
Right. The clothes that you had when you were 20 and you're 50 and going through those closets, and nobody wants to do that. And so one of the things that I also recommend in the book is kind of paring down. If you're over 40, you really could look in your living space and see what you have and what you're not using and donate that. Donate it or dispose of it if it's not in good working order. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Just kind of purge.
Yes. And it's interesting that you said that about your grandmother, because one of the things that I mentioned in the book is to write a letter of intent. And while that's not legally binding, it doesn't serve or substitute for a will. It does give clarity about what you want to happen at your death. And that clarity, when things are written, that's almost as if you're speaking from the grave. And it gives your loved ones the idea and the outline of what you want to happen. And it's important because people have conversations during their lives and they say, oh, I would want you to hold on to this. This is something beloved and I want you to have it. But if it's not in writing, you know what, it really
Somebody
happened.
else going to say, you know what?
Yeah, that's right. And so we say in law, we say that in the legal world, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. And you know, some contracts have to be reduced to writing because that's evidence of what you wanted to happen. Think about land contracts. One of the things we learn our first year of law school is that there are certain contracts that have to be reduced to writing, marriage, land. And so when you think about estate planning, those things need to be reduced to writing. Don't rely on someone's oral conversations. Yes, yes, it's
Because it won't
important.
hold up.
It won't. It won't. It has no legal binding.
No legal binding. Wow. So tell me this. What if a person says, I want you to have all of my purses and all of my suits when I leave here. They put it on a notebook, piece of paper, and have it notarized.
Okay, so that's a nice notarized piece of paper.
Okay.
That's not a will. And so this is the other thing. You have to be very clear that you are creating a legally binding document. Okay, so a will has to be executed with the formalities that are required of your state. That usually means that it has to be signed by the person. That person has to have capacity. They have to be over 18. It has to be witnessed, and it has to be notarized. But usually written wills, they are subject to scrutiny because who wrote that? How do we know that that's you? And so I really say speak to an attorney. If you want to talk about personal property, people have had addendums to their will where they list out personal property and they say whatever attachment or addendum is found at my death, or the most updated addendum at my death, is binding, and people have listed specific items that they want to go to people. That may be fine, but you have got to make sure that you are executing these documents in conformity with your state law.
I love it.
Period.
I love it. I love it. This is good stuff, y'all. This is good information. This is life-changing information.
Yes.
And I'm going to be transparent. We're going to have to talk.
Yes. You know, one of the other things I wanted to talk about,
Sure.
and we're talking about disposing of our assets at death, but I also want to talk about the importance of accumulating assets during your lifetime. And I think sometimes people think, well, I don't make a lot of money, or I'm not super rich, so I don't have a lot to leave someone. But you have an opportunity to leave something to someone. If you're working, take advantage, if you can, of any type of deferred compensation plans that your company has. And I'm talking about like a 401k or a 403b. Any little bit of money that you invest over time can grow into a sizable amount if you leave it alone. If you
Don't
leave it
touch it.
alone and don't touch it, don't
Be
borrow
like
from
the
it.
crock pot. Set
Yeah.
it and forget it.
Set it and forget it. And I'm going to tell you, when we're talking about building a legacy, we're talking about how to build generational wealth. If my mother passed away and was able to leave me $20,000, and I was able to take that $20,000 and invest it, and so then when I die, it's now become $40,000, and I leave it to my children, and then they've gotten $40,000 and they invest it, and then when
continues.
it could just continue. And so that's what we're talking about, like being able to look beyond the immediate gratification sometimes, and think about your
I'm gonna go
long-term
buy me
goals.
something, you know?
Right. Yeah. Life insurance
Not
becomes a
thinking
win.
past your nose.
Yeah, life insurance becomes a windfall for people, and that's not to negate the need that that people have. I'm not doing that. But what I am saying is, if we could just kind of balance that, you know, instead of going on a trip, and the whole family goes, maybe you all pay half of the amount yourself and use some of the proceeds for that, and use the other half to invest.
Exactly.
You know, just making some different choices and decisions. And so we walk through different strategies in the book of how to accumulate an estate, because what you don't want is a bunch of depreciable property in your estate. Old cell phones, old TVs, because those things become outdated as soon as they come out. So we think about, I bought a phone. I bought an iPhone 10 in 2018. Now, I had an iPhone 5 before that. It stopped working. I went to the carrier and they were like, we don't even support that anymore. So I finally did the jump and got the 10. But guess what? We're in 2020 now and we're on 11. You know, so
We're going to be on 12 in June.
Exactly. And so things are going to depreciate. But when we talk about investments, when we talk about land, real estate, those things tend
Appreciate.
to appreciate. And so what you want is to have more appreciated property versus depreciated property in your estate. Yeah.
Excellent. I have a question that some of the listeners may want to know, and that would be life insurance versus a final expense plan. I used to sell life insurance and final expense planning, and my husband's grandfather passed a couple of years ago at 93. All of his, such a blessing that both of our grandparents had the same mindset, but of course all of his house was totally in order. Now we did have to go through and figure out what we want to get rid of in the home, but that was nothing compared to having to figure out how we're going to do the disposal.
Right.
That's right.
And so all of that was in order. He did not have a final expense burial plan, but he did have life insurance, and he also had an inheritance for his grandchildren. Look at God. Isn't that amazing?
That is.
Just amazing. And he always told them and us when I came into the family that it's not about how much you make, it's about what you do with what you make.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes, and so he was a wealthy man that lived very modestly and had an inheritance for his children. I want to do that.
That's right.
I want to do that and have something for my grandchildren and have my house in order. And so that is something that I want to get your take as an attorney. Final expense versus life insurance.
Okay, so let
Or
me
both.
let me make this disclaimer. So I am not a life insurance agent. So this is just my personal opinion and what I talk through with my mother. So when I was born, my mother had life insurance, and life insurance is a income replacement. So if something should happen to her, there would be a lump sum of money that would replace her income until I was able to earn income myself. When I became older, my mother did not renew her life insurance. So she had term life insurance. That was the choice that she made. Instead of paying those premiums, she invested in the stock market. And so she bought a plan because she just wanted all of her affairs just kind of like in order. There's different schools of thought. Some people continue to pay insurance over a period of time so that there's this lump sum payment. Some people take the amount that they would have invested in those premiums and invest it in something that they feel like they can get a higher rate of return. So I really think it's important to have that conversation with the insurance agent. Some people are they have more insurance, life insurance, than they have investments. And maybe that works for them. Some people have more investments, and so they know that they can pull out $10,000 and pay for their
And still have something
and
left
still
over.
have something left over. So it's just a matter of personal opinion. I know that life insurance can start becoming more costly as we get older, and so but you really got to. I think it's really important to speak with an insurance agent. My opinion is I want to be able to pay outright for anything that I need. And so I am investing so that I can leave a legacy for the people and the charities that I care about and be able to take care of my legal affairs, i.e. my burial at death. So
Awesome. For those that are not married and have a close friend or a close cousin, how many people do you suggest are on their final paperwork or, who could take care of that? Because you could have one person, that one person could die before you and you may not even get a chance to change it.
That's right. Well, I always recommend that if you name someone, you also have a contingent name. So you name about 2 to 3 people. That's the best thing. And I tend to believe that one person making a decision is fine, maybe 2. That's it. If you have 5 kids, 5 kids should not be on any deed, because the more people that are involved, the more conversation, differing of opinion that can occur. And then I think it's very important to be very clear about who you might name. So my cousin is named on some of my legal affairs. she is the most meticulous person that I know. And so I was comfortable naming her. Now, there are people who are closer to me in relationship from a family line, but she is the one that I identified that would be able to handle.
Handle your business.
Yes. So don't just say, oh, well, it has
She's
to be
close
my
to me,
daughter.
yeah.
And this is the other thing. Think about who lives where you live, because I know a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm going to put my daughter on this power of attorney, and your daughter lives in California and you live in Missouri. That doesn't make any sense, because they'll have to fly here to respond to things. And so you really need to identify someone who lives in your area to be your representative. If that's the route that you're going to pursue. Yeah, you need someone that's there, that's here, that's where you are, that can really advocate for you. So that's something else to consider.
Wow. Such good information. Good stuff, you guys. Donna, I want to go over how they can get in touch with you again before we close out the show. We're talking to Donna Watson, in case you haven't, or in case you're just now tuning in. Renee Sutherland, her counterpart and lifetime friend, is here with us as well, that worked with her. We're discussing the My Legacy experience, how Donna's mother's death prepared her for her death, how her mother's life prepared her for her death. And so we're talking about end of life planning, estate planning, getting your business and your finances in order so that you do not leave that stress and burden. It's enough dealing with the loss of a loved one.
Yes, it is.
It is.
More than enough. And so you add in trying to figure out where paperwork is, and then discovering that the insurance policy had lapsed when the family member was ill and they didn't pay the last payment and they've been paying for 50 years.
Yes.
And these things are true life stories that
Yes.
happens. And then you're on Facebook getting a GoFundMe, and it's just heartbreaking.
It is. It really is. And so, and just having the conversation with your family is important, because really your family is supposed to be your team. And so you have a life team that's here to help you with your life matters. And so your team, that's your board of directors. You're that CEO of your life. And so you make sure your board knows what you're doing. You don't act autonomously. We're here as a collective body to help one another.
Amen.
And if you don't feel that in your family, then you get you some family. Some friends,
Friends that are family.
that can help you with that.
I love it, family. I
Absolutely.
love it.
I can be reached at my website is www.mylegacyexperience.com. On it, you will find some podcasts that go into further conversations or more in depth on wills, on trust. There's information about those particular items, and there's information to click in order to order the book. I also want to say that one of the things that I'm also privileged to do is doing a experience at St. James United Methodist Church. We are doing Financial Peace University. That begins January 22nd at 6:00 p.m. Please reach out to me if that's something that you're interested in. This is a way of having a conversation about your finances, getting a budget together, making sure that you're on track for retirement. They talk about insurance. They talk about end of life. Talk about legacy planning. And it's a very comprehensive course. It's by Dave Ramsey, but our church is going to sponsor that again this year. It's been on a hiatus, but we have brought that back. If you are interested in coming to that, I know that it will be a blessing to you. Anytime you can have a comprehensive conversation about your finances, take advantage of it, because guess what? There are other people that do that regularly.
Yes.
So we're behind. So at times we're behind. So let's be open to that. And if you want to do that, please reach out to me.
Awesome. This has been a phenomenal way to begin the year. Good information. It's a new year. It's a new decade. I think they're cutting us off. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Listening audience.
Awesome. I think he see, I was waiting for Mr. Walker.
Okay.
He might still be on Facebook.
So I'm gonna
Okay.
keep a straight face.
No, we're not. Are we still in there? I can't tell.
Okay, too.
Live on
tell.
Facebook.
I don't know. But this, we're gonna take some fake pictures. There he comes. We're gonna take some fake pictures while we're sitting here, like we're talking to each other, and then we're gonna take a couple pictures standing up, and then we'll be done.
I can't believe it went so quickly.
Yeah, it goes quick. I was looking at that clock.